Here's something that will break a very convenient illusion if you've ever dreamed of living off crypto passive income. Most channels paint a nice picture. Just stake XRP and live off the interest. The problem is, you cannot physically stake XRP the way you stake Ethereum or Solana. The XRP ledger doesn't even use a proof of stake mechanism. And that's just the beginning of the truth nobody explains. Today I'm breaking down 3 coins, XRP, HBAR, and XLM, and showing you the exact math. How many tokens and how much money you'd actually need to generate $2,500 in passive income every single month. Spoiler: the numbers will surprise you, and not always in a good way. Stick around until the end, because I'll compare all 3 assets by risk versus realism. The first thing you need to understand about crypto passive income. Before we run the numbers, we need to clear up one major misconception. The word staking gets used very loosely in crypto, and a lot of people confuse real protocol-level staking with regular yield programs run by exchanges and lending platforms. Real staking means locking up tokens to help secure a network through a proof-of-stake mechanism and earning rewards directly from the protocol itself. That's how it works on Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano. But not all 3 of the coins we're covering today work the same way. Let's start with the most important fact. The XRP ledger does not use proof of stake. Instead, the network runs on its own consensus protocol, where transactions are confirmed by trusted validators, and that process has nothing to do with holders locking up their tokens. That means it's physically impossible to stake XRP at the protocol level and earn rewards for securing the network. That mechanism simply doesn't exist. Everything labeled XRP staking on exchanges and platforms is actually a yield program built on lending, liquidity pools, or market making. Exchanges like Binance offer flexible savings programs typically yielding 1 to 3% annually. More aggressive platforms like Nexo offer lending programs yielding 4 to 8% annually, but that comes with counterparty risk. You're essentially lending your tokens to the platform. Decentralized liquidity pools can offer 5 to 20% annually, but with elevated risk and volatility. For our math, let's use 3 realistic scenarios: a conservative case at 2% annual yield, a moderate case at 4%, and an aggressive DeFi case at 8%. At XRP's current price of around $1, to generate $2,500 a month, or $30,000 a year, you would need, at the conservative 2% scenario, $1.5 million in capital, which equals 1.5 million XRP tokens. At the moderate 4% scenario, $750,000, or 750,000 tokens. At the aggressive DeFi scenario of 8%, $375,000, or 375,000 tokens. Notice the difference. To generate the exact same passive income, you need 4 times less capital at the aggressive end compared to the conservative end. But the aggressive scenario also means counterparty risk, smart contract risk, and platform risk, that money isn't protected the same way a bank deposit is. HBA. This is where real staking actually exists. Now for some good news. Unlike XRP, the Hedera network genuinely uses a proof-of-stake mechanism, and real protocol-level staking exists here. You can delegate your HBAR tokens directly to network nodes through wallets like Hashpack, without handing control of the asset over to a third party. But here's the catch. The actual staking yield on HBAR is fairly modest. Current data shows a native staking yield in the range of about 1.9 to 2.5% annually. That's noticeably lower than many other proof-of-stake networks, because Hedera's reward model is designed more around network stability than maximizing yield for holders. More aggressive platforms and yield programs can offer 4 to 6% annually. But at that point, you're no longer talking about pure protocol staking, you're combining it with additional loyalty programs or lending products. Now let's run the math. At HBAR's current price of around 7 cents, to generate $2,500 a month, at the conservative native staking scenario of 2% annually, you'd need $1.5 million in capital, which comes out to roughly 21,400,000 HBAR tokens. At the moderate 4% scenario, $750,000, around 10,700,000 tokens. At the aggressive 6% scenario, $500,000, around 7,140,000 tokens. Notice the sheer number of tokens involved. We're talking tens of millions, because the price per HBAR is so low. That sounds intimidating on the surface, but it's actually the exact same dollar capital as the XRP example, just expressed in a different token count. XLM, a nearly identical story to XRP. Stellar's situation is almost a mirror image of XRP. Stellar's consensus protocol also doesn't require locking up tokens to confirm transactions, which means there's no native protocol level staking here either. Everything marketed as XLM yield is an external program. Market-making strategies offering up to 5% annually, flexible savings accounts on exchanges offering 1 to 3%, and lending platforms like Nexo, under certain loyalty conditions, offering yields as high as 11% annually, though that's already a fairly aggressive and risky tier with lockup periods as long as 7 months. Let's use 3 scenarios here too: conservative at 3%, moderate at 5%, and aggressive at 8% annually. At XLM's current price of around 16 cents, the conservative scenario requires $1 million in capital, roughly 6,250,000 tokens. The moderate scenario requires $600,000, roughly 3,750,000 tokens. The aggressive scenario requires $375,000, roughly 2,343,000 tokens. Comparing all 3 assets. Now let's pull this all together to see the full picture. If you want to generate $2,500 in monthly passive income at a moderate, reasonable level of risk, meaning no extreme DeFi protocols and no lengthy lockup periods, you would realistically need somewhere between $600,000 and $750,000 of invested capital, regardless of which of these 3 coins you choose. The difference isn't in the dollar amount, it's in the token count and in where that yield is coming from. If you go the HBAR route, you get the only option among these 3 assets with genuine protocol-level staking, but with a lower baseline yield, and any push for higher percentage returns means moving toward less transparent third-party programs. If you go the XRP or XLM route, you're accepting from the start that all of the yield comes from outside the protocol itself, through exchanges, lending platforms, or liquidity pools, which means counterparty and platform risk are baked into the equation from day one, not an optional add-on for higher returns. What this actually means for a real person. Let's be completely honest here. A figure of $600,000 to $750,000 is not where the average investor starts. That's a capital level that either builds up over years through portfolio price appreciation or requires significant starting capital from outside the crypto market entirely. That's exactly why the idea of living off crypto staking passive income right now is, in the vast majority of cases, a fantasy reserved for people who already built serious capital through some other path. For a typical investor with a $5,000 or $10,000 portfolio, the realistic goal isn't a monthly passive income that covers your living expenses. It's reinvesting a modest yield back into the portfolio to accelerate capital growth through compounding. And one more important point. Any yield above 5 to 6% annually on these three assets almost always signals additional risk, whether that's platform credit risk, smart contract risk, or the risk of losing access to your funds during a long lockup period. High yield doesn't appear out of thin air. It always compensates for some hidden risk that you need to evaluate for yourself before putting money in. What I'm doing with this information? Personally, I don't treat passive income from XRP, HBR, or XLM as a primary income source at this stage. Instead, I use conservative yield programs as a way to modestly boost long-term portfolio returns without taking on excessive risk. Real capital growth for me still comes from price appreciation of the underlying asset, not from interest on a deposit. And that's exactly why all of our previous breakdowns on XRP, HBAR, and XLM price growth matter far more to the real outcome than any single yield number. If this breakdown was useful, seeing the real math instead of vague promises about living off crypto passive income, hit like. It genuinely helps the channel, and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Tell me in the comments which of these three coins looks like the most realistic passive income option to you, factoring in both risk and yield. See you in the next one.